Well, so let's go to Phil Bouchard then. Let's Phil, if you're still with us, because I did promise him he had some results. Phil?
Hey, thanks, Tim, for
Yes, and thank you for your patience, sir. Thank you
yeah,
for
no
your
problem.
patience.
That was a great conference today. Very rich.
Well, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Did you have a PowerPoint that you wanted to share, or just?
No, just a PDF. I'll show. It's gonna be short and sweet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So can you see my screen?
Yeah. Nope, looks great.
So it's very simple. So again, thanks for all you guys initiatives you take on anti-gravity. I really respect what you guys are doing. A month ago, I didn't even know about gravitomagnetic acceleration, and I studied it very intensively and very quickly. I did some maths, and I had a chance to do the experiment in the last 2 weeks, which last week it failed, but this week it succeeded. So I'm pretty happy about that. I found equipment that was powerful enough to generate a gravitomagnetic field, and I have a gravimeter sensitive enough to detect such a variation in the gravity acceleration. So as you can see, after 30 seconds, I start the engine, and we can see a shift in the gravitational acceleration. I did the experiment 6 times, where the first three times I placed the gravimeter in a certain position. I moved it, I flipped it 180 degrees for the last 3 times, and I still got the same consistent results. And I can say that the apparatus was on a stationary solid table, and so was the gravimeter. So it was very, the gravimeter was not tilting also, it was very stable. And there couldn't be any electromagnetic interference with the gravimeter, because otherwise the results would just have been, just scrambled all over the place. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. And I have a table of the exact data that I collected. And yeah, so these are my results. I cannot say, I cannot give numbers of the theoretical calculations that I made, because for commercial security and personal reasons, I cannot share that information. But I can tell you for a fact that the gravitomagnetic acceleration is there. Einstein was wrong, and yeah, so I encourage you to study that field further. Thank you.
Awesome. All set, Phil?
Yeah, that was short and sweet, like I said.
Thank you. Well, do you guys want to go? Should we go to open discussion now? Do you guys want to go to open discussion? Because I know we still have Bob with us, and I know there's still questions for Bob.
I have a question for Bob Greenyer.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's go to open discussion. So what I'm going to do, and Harold, I know you already know, but guys, just try not to talk over each other too much. Just unmute yourself, when you want to talk, and so I don't moderate open discussion. That's why it's open, right? So, okay, good deal.
Okay, thank you. Bob, I have a question for you. And my question is that you have all this, the material. It looks like it takes magnetic energy, and you come and converted the process that you're using, and you create all these elements and all these things. And I wonder, in the conversion, using the material and the energy, the magnetic energy, does that process allow to convert, for example, one type of energy to another, or a force applied to the material, for example, that you use in the metal, will convert it to another force? Is there anything, relevant to that in your research?
Yeah, so as far as I can work out, the exotic vacuum object is a universal clutch, as Ken Shoulders called it. It can convert light, basically any boson or anything that can become a boson, which, like, if you take two fermions or any pair of anything, it will end up as a boson. So even fermions can be captured. And it will compress it and chuck out something, different. So if light goes into a solar panel, is the light kicking out an electron, or is it being converted into an electron? That may be a good question. But if you take a positron and an electron and you collide them, you get two 511 keV photons going in opposite directions. So the electron and positron are annihilated, and they convert into two photons. So if it can go that way, it should be able to go through the other way. And so how do you do that? What I can see, as appears through multiple pieces of research, is that, for instance, the iton of Matsumoto is it's electron initiated, but it creates with an ion. In his case, he uses protons or deuterons. It creates a structure that then causes self-compression, and at a certain point, it gets to the point of stimulating a neutrino to be produced, and you end up a positron being emitted, and you get positron, neutrino, and electron bound, and that is the iton particle. And these then can form a coherent matter sheath, and that is, in his view, the ball lightning, the exotic vacuum object. And when these things are at a certain energy level, they can convert almost anything into essentially raw energy. It's almost proto-matter. It's prima materia, as the alchemists would call it. And then that can be synthesized into almost anything else, right the way down to denatured back into light and leptons, be that microleptons, like neutrinos, or large leptons with charge, like electrons or muons. But you can basically dissolve the matter. So you can trigger this with sound. So sound can play a role. And any process that converts distortion of space-time and reduces that will yield energy. And the energy could come out in various forms. It could come out as sound, it could come out as light, it could come out as infrared, which is heat, and so on. And so if you can go one way, you should be able to go the other if you had a universal clutch. That it's like a transmitter receiver. And so that, in my view, I agree with Ken Shoulders that is what it's able to do. And in fact, when you get these soliton pairs, so I have images that I've shared in the past of a 1986 sample of steel I call ball burn, and it has an overlaid yin-yang structure, and in one side it's scooped out the material and it's thrown it down in an exactly the same structure on the other side. So this is the soliton that you were seeing in that plasma research paper from a few months ago, from the Chinese and American and Japanese and the UK research. But the soliton they're looking at is quite far apart, and it's not as intense. In the Hutchison effect, it was literally overlaid. So, and the reason it's overlaid is because that's how the magnetohydrodynamics works, in the same way as the hydrodynamics. So yes, you can convert anything into anything. Now, the specific arrangement of equipment that you need to do a specific thing is when I went to Aarhus University, and I knew a lot less than I know now, I said at some point in the future, there will be entire universities with different departments dedicated to exploring various aspects of what this single technology can do. Whether it's converting matter into light, dark matter into matter, or transmuting elements from an element to another, or using the process to provide propulsion in the various means that it can provide propulsion. And I didn't really go into in a lot of different detail, but Bostic was talking about ion propulsion, which Gamble was talking about as well, Mike Gamble. So with the NASA thing, so you can actually use this to fire ions. And the Russians under Shishkin, and I've shared this presentation called A New Kind of Penetrating Radiation on the Martin Fleischmann Memorials channel. They've shown that they can capture ions and they spit them out, and the energy, and they've measured the pit width and the pit depth based on the ion that's spat out. So they can calculate the energy of the ions that are spat out from these structures. So it can do propulsion via spitting out ions. It can then, Ken Shoulder's talking about mass rectification. So you capture a piece of mass, it would shield its charge and it would shield its inertia. And then using a standard sort of 230 volt socket, you can accelerate to about 1/10 of the speed of light, like you do in an electron gun, because you've converted all of that matter. Maybe it's a 10 million tungsten ions. You've converted it inside the ball lightning so that it doesn't express its mass or inertia. It can't interact in that way, but it acts as one electron. So all you're having to do is provide the energy, like you do in a cathode ray tube, to accelerate that whole composite structure into a target. And at the point it hits the target, it blows up, and all of the inertia that material has, it continues moving in that direction. So that produces a pulse drive, and you are rectifying the mass. So you're able to provide propulsion that way. And the method that I've talked about with propulsion, there's another method that is discussed in the 1995 paper that's in here, and you can go and download that, where he's talking about the electronuclear collapse. So you use the process of creating the itonic clusters, and there's several ways that I've discussed over the last couple of years. But once you've got the itonic cluster and it self-compresses and collapses, it then destroys the nucleons, and then you have an explosion. And the explosion can then provide an impulse to your device that you want to propel. So that's another way by actually, and there's actually a proposal by a guy called Leif Homlid, and Leif Homlid uses a dehydrogen, oh dear, it's a styrene catalyst, and basically it has iron in there. The iron's important from the ferromagnetic component. It has potassium in there and so on, and he passes deuterium over it. It's at 400 degrees. Basically it produces ultra dense deuterium, which is effectively, in my view, an itonic cluster. And then he hits it with UV light or a laser, and that causes it to explode. And he's describing that this is a way of producing a propulsion for a propulsion system. So he's describing the same system in the same way. So it almost doesn't matter what you want, whether you want gravity shielding or the effect of gravity is negated, charge and inertia. So if you have no charge, for instance, and here's another thing, if you wanted to teleport through some matter, ball lightning is known to be able to travel through glass and if it's carrying something inside it, how does that happen? I kind of visualize it like this, and you might, this is my own personal hypothesis. When you have 2.45 gigahertz microwave in your house, you can get signal through quite a lot of walls. It travels through the walls, right? If you have a Duga array in say near Chernobyl, you can transmit that extra long frequency, radio frequency, through the earth. And that's how some of these systems communicate with submarines, you know, these big low frequency radar antennas. When you get to 5 gigahertz microwave in your house, and you're using 5G Wi-Fi, it doesn't have a very good range, right? Because it starts to interact with the matter more, okay? Now, imagine you have an electron and it's in your finger, and I'm pushing, I don't know, I'm pushing this pen, right? The electron is the same as the electron in here. So they're absolutely in tune with each other. So when I push on this, I can push that over. That's why I'm not falling through the chair. There's the charge repulsion. Now, imagine you've got something that's the size of a spaceship, right? But its entire sphere that's around it is acting as one electron, right? It doesn't see the electrons around it because it's a different quantum object. And so it basically doesn't see it. There's no effect of its environment. It's like it's on a different level. It's like we don't really notice the air unless it's a windy day. And like fish don't notice the water. It's just what they're living in. And it's like in space, you wouldn't notice that. I see it like that. It's like that 5G to the 2.45G to the extra low frequency. You're creating something that's a macro quantum object, and inside it's a different space-time. And you basically, it can't get in. And what you find in some of our experiments is that when this coherent matter sheet forms, nothing can penetrate it. And Ken Shoulders talks about this. You can use it as like a Star Trek shield. And we've observed this in our experiments. You could fire a laser at it, and let's say you have a laser, and ordinarily it's a laser and it's interacting with a few electrons. Now you're firing a laser and you're acting with a quantum object that contains trillions and trillions, like 10 to the 23 electrons, or vastly more than that. But they're all acting as one thing. The energy is instantaneously, no time whatsoever. It's dissipated across the entire structure. So it doesn't raise a small part of it to a high temperature. The energy is dissipated everywhere, instantaneously. And this is what happens on the inside. You don't see radiation in cold fusion, because so for instance, if you have two nitrogen atoms fusing or doing a transmutation, an exchange reaction to produce one hydrogen atom and one aluminium atom, so one proton and 127 aluminium, that produces 15.8 million electron volts for 1 2 2 to 2 reaction. That if that occurs inside the inner the coherent matter layer, the energy that's yielded, that 15.8 mega electron volts, which is kinetic energy of those two daughter products, that completely gets instantaneously dissipated to all of the material. And this goes for gamma, and this goes for X-rays and stuff. It provides a shield. And this was actually talked about by the first guy that did deuterium and palladium boiling water reactor in the 1950s. He was a Russian. I can't remember his name immediately right now, but he actually talked about using this technology to provide a shield against radiation. And that's what it will do. It will provide against all photons. No photons will be able to penetrate. No cold relic neutrinos will be able to penetrate. No matter will be able to penetrate. And we can see this when we create ball lightning in our reactor. It instantaneously eats the material. 100%, and it's a perfectly clean line. At the point where it's from coherent matter to non-coherent matter, even when it's copper, you get the copper disappears, and we've got them up to 10 millimeters. So in Henk's reactor, we can create the ball lightning. It's a 10 millimeter sphere, and it completely consumes the copper. And it's literally like that scene in Terminator where Terminator appears and that sphere and everything around that sphere is completely gone. That's what we produce in our reactor. That's exactly that. And so I believe you could teleport. The thing would be absolutely minuscule. You could fire it through the earth, and when it comes back into the physical reality, it would expand to a boundary. In fact, the very first video we shared of the Vega reactors was called EVO Blaster. You can go and see it on our YouTube channel. It's called EVO Blaster. A coherent matter EVO is formed on the anode by electron bunching coming from the large cathodes going to the anode. And then because it loses its charge and becomes neutral, it drifts, it travels away for whatever reason it's going away. It hits the cathode, gets energized again. Now, as something is condensing, you have, for instance, let's say you're going from plasma to a gas, going to a liquid, going to a solid. At each stage, you have to lose energy. Now, take your electrons, and they're coming. There's a pressure out, this magnetic structure that has a pressure out, but it has a pull in from the charge. You end up with this charge, this intense double layer structure where the electrons are bunching together. Now, they lose degrees of freedom. So they can't orient themselves. It's like having a room that I'm sitting in now with two of us. We've all got degrees of freedom, so we can have different energies moving around, right? But now if I fill this room with 50 people, no one can move. And if we add any kinetic energy to start with, we have to release it to the environment. And so you end up with all of the electrons at exactly the same temperature because they have their mutual repulsion. So they end up becoming coherent. So the electrons lose their energy when they're forming the coherent matter. So the structure then it can't see external environment. So you can have that thing living for 2 days or 2 months. It's still glowing because it's still pulling in electrons and cohering them and releasing X-rays, which are ionizing the air around it. It can even transmute matter, but it's extremely stable because it's a soliton. Okay, it's able to spin in its magnetic loop. It's intense magnetic energy, which is self-feeding. Okay, now when that structure hits the cathode and gets destabilized, it blows up. And what happens? All of the electrons, trillions and trillions and trillions of them that are coherent because they formed Cooper pairs, which are bosons, and then they formed one big Bose-Einstein condensate, which acted as one electron. When they, which are in a very, very, very small self-compressed state with the ions that they were carrying, when they are returned, as Ken Shoulders puts it, to the world, the universe of normal electrons, they have Coulombic repulsion. And so you get, they all fly apart. And you see in that video, them exploding to about a distance of about a centimeter, and it stops dead. That's as far as they go. And it's just completely symmetrical. And you get an EMP, you get an electromagnetic pulse. It's a scalar electromagnetic pulse, and you can pick it up on AM radio. And this is what John Hutchison was listening for to know when his technology was working. And the MP on the bottom of the reactor, which is glowing hot and picked up on the camera, it's glowing, I don't know, maybe 500, 600, 700 degrees, okay? Whatever it is. When this thing explodes, all of the electrons have to get back their kinetic thermal energy that they lost when they were cohering. And what it does is it returns that area of the inside of the reactor to absolute zero, like that.
Wow.
And so this technology is allowed to freeze things instantaneously. Absolutely instantaneously. So in this reactor here, which is a Lion reactor, just covered with alumina. This reactor here, what happened was it has around this part here, it has 2 lines of copper wire. Now, the guy that did an experiment, the author of that experiment, he shut down the reactor, turned off the power, and to the insulated bolt at the end here, he attached a 20 watt bulb, and it lit to a drain for 30 minutes. And that was the EVOs stored in the metal, returning to normal electrons. But the moment he attached it, there was an electron flow, and he caused the electron condensates to return to normal electrons, and the material froze, and it went from around about 700 degrees centigrade to minus 273 degrees centigrade, the entire thing in a split second, in an absolute split second. And this is recorded because the copper oxide, the cuprous oxide on there is complete glass. There's no crystals in it whatsoever. So basically you can heat environments, you can cool things instantaneously. You got propulsion, you can transmute, you can construct matter, you can transmute matter, you can destroy matter. You've got propulsion. Like I say, anything Ken Shoulders said, anything you would want to do well, this is probably the technology that would do it best.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Okay, Gordon.
Hi, another
Hi.
UK voice from Scotland, north of the border.
All right there. Hi, you in Scotland.
Okay, yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, pretty damn cold up here. Anyway, just a non-technical question. Do you not have any concerns that this is going to be eaten up by the sort of government-based defence community? And a lot of the
what I realized in 2017 was 100% this was already known, and I had a choice to walk away from talking about this when I got to a point of a level of understanding which is way behind where I am now. But I had a choice. I had a choice to either move forward and keep my integrity or walk away from it, knowing that it's already weaponized.
Right.
But it's already used for anti-gravity. Now, the thing is, I know this. You know, before I came on this chat today, right, I was threatened by someone out of the blue who somehow managed to get my email and threatened to dox me and said that the people in this group are all frauds and you shouldn't be associating with them, right? Now, I went to present at Boulder, Colorado, the Cold Fusion conference there. I had been warned by a guy that I knew was in the CIA. I'd never mentioned anti-gravity, but in the presentation I gave in ASTI in whenever it was, June the 9th, 2018, I thought 17 or 18, 17, I think. This guy came in drunk. He says, look, Bob, I don't mind you talking about the cold fusion, this, that, and the other. He says, but don't talk about anti-gravity. Right. And I've seen, my friends have seen the anti-gravity craft, you know, my colleagues have seen them, but you don't talk about them. And I said, what are you talking about? I didn't even know I should be talking about. Should I be talking about them? Should I be talking about them? And then I went to present Alexander Parkhomov's reactor data at the conference in Boulder, Colorado. And there I was told, are you going to speak? And I said, well, I haven't got a slot. They said, well, the slot's free because people haven't been able to come. And then I went and spoke to the people there, and they said, oh, no, there's no slots free. And then I was told by someone who I know very well that he was asked subsequent to that to speak. And later down the line, I got told that the people organizing the conference didn't want me to speak because they were worried I was going to talk about anti-gravity.
Warned off. Yeah.
Now, in 1996, Martin Fleischmann was having an interview with Christopher P. Tinsley, which is published in Infinite Energy. And he was talking about the fact that cold fusion was only one of 4 things which were all related that he was researching at the time. One of them was superconductivity in metals. One of them was cold fusion. Another one was, I can't remember just right now. And the other one was, he asked him about anti-gravity. And in the 3 pages on the website where you can see it, it's like blah, 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 dot, and then dot, dot, dot. And then it's the only time where Martin Fleischmann doesn't have Christopher P. Tinsley interspersed with the comment that there is a but, dot, dot, dot. And the preceding question is about anti-gravity. These are related. The Salvatore Pais patents absolutely categorically state that they are related. And this is it. This is what we're up against.
Yep. Yeah, there's a big fear out there of somehow Joe Public actually becoming aware that these technologies exist and have existed since
because of the
1950s, 1960s.
Because, well, they've existed for all of eternity, by the way. Any science that could be discovered is eternal science. And so, and this has already been used by the people that brought us here, or at least the intelligent part of it. And so if you had a society that didn't have to spend a dime and could travel from Scotland to Canberra in 10 seconds, and you didn't have to ask anyone, you didn't have to show your passport, how could you control humanity? If you were going to roll out this technology, you would have to put tracking into the biology of every human, and it would have to have an off switch. And then you would have to say, right, we're going to roll out the technology, but if you abuse it, we're going to turn you off. And we've already got the shit in your body. Excuse my swearing.
Well, the other thing is the people that actually control all the money in the world, you know, instantly they would be out of business overnight because the petrol dollar millionaires would cease to exist. You wouldn't need petrol.
The Tesla carbon button lamp was able to transmute matter. The Tesla carbon button lamp was probably one of the first. It was the first atom smasher in the modern era. Tesla was able to do this. He didn't understand everything about it, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of what he did do, he was looking at ancient artifacts and reverse engineering.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that he wasn't the genius that everyone makes him out to be, because when you see what I've seen under the microscope, it's all over the archaeology, and you only needed to make a couple of connections and you can see it's all there. So this is what we're facing. And so if you want to know why someone would have to go into 7 countries in 5 years and raid all their museums, it's because the technology was in the museums. Let me show, I'll share one slide if you're interested. Let me share a slide.
Sure.
If people are okay with that, I will get one slide up here. It's from my coherent matter. Is it this one?
I have direct experience actually of US military taking a technology that was put in the public domain that delivered HD vision glasses, which were capable of doing 2010 vision.
Wow.
And US military tested it, found that it delivered a 0.3 of a second performance increase for fighter pilots. And they've bought the company now and the technology, and that's no longer available. And that was designed originally to actually sort all sorts of visual problems for people that have all sorts of really serious vision defects that otherwise,
you could actually use it for that
yeah,
will eventually come.
It was a transformable goo, and you had your normal spectacles, and inside there was a programmable goo. That literally a fingerprint image was done on a machine of the aberrations of the eye, and it was then corrected on a bespoke basis, and it worked. And it was in market for 3 years. And I was approached at a trade show in Italy by a guy called Commander Scudamore, not in military clothing. They had 2 sidekicks with them, and they bought a couple of machines, and they quite blatantly said, "We'd like to test this stuff. We've heard about it." And that was the start point. And 3 years down the road, that company didn't exist because they bought the patents, the company, and everything.
That's why we're open. And what we found out is that most of the things that the military are even patenting, they shouldn't be able to. Because it's already been done in the open. So can you see the slide?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a lantern from northern Iraq, and it could be as much as 10,000 BC. So it could be up to 12,000 years ago. And what you have is the ring, and we've shown the soliton ring. Okay. And you imagine this is the drawing that I showed earlier, but I'm looking now from the bottom. And this is the auspicious symbol that the Germans were very interested in pre-war. And there is a right and left one. Having lived in India for the best part of 10 years, every temple has 2 of these paired auspicious symbols. One is the maker, and the other one is the destroyer. It is the yin and the yang. So this is on the 1986 Hutchison burn sample that we have, steel. And you can see exactly the same structure, shape. This is consumed the matter. It's literally taken the matter away. So this is your North Pole, and this grabs the matter and it puts it into a wormhole that comes down in the magnetic flux loop, and it dumps it down here. And of course, a lot of the material is converted into oxygen and stuff, so it just disappears. But there are carbon stuff here. It typically makes carbon. Okay, it makes all of the elements principally for life. So it is the flower of life. It is the fleur de lis. So anyway, on this underside of this lantern, you can see debossed here, i.e. raised, 2 out of phase particles coming in, and they're coming in to the radius of the outside of this, right? And they come down through the vortex to the central cohering point, and they get thrown out in phase, 2 particles which are embossed. So this is implying these particles are coming out from above, and they're going down, cohering, and coming out in phase and debossed. This is exactly showing the technology. And this is a mass-produced lantern. Okay. And on the top side, you have these monopole structures here, which make up the big part of the cohering force. And this is a picture, a sketch drawn from a picture in Solin's 2001 patent, where you have the alternating monopole groups. And so you have the north groups, the south groups, and it produced these chevrons around the outside. It's absolutely perfect, and it produces always produces this particular shape. And you can see the same shape here represented on the actual structure. And this is for producing light. And of course, this will produce light as it coheres the matter. It's a lantern. It's so blatant. Yeah, so this is effectively what I'm showing here. So you get the one pole and the other pole, and it grabs the material. And this is what I tried to show earlier. And this is a whole bunch of different experiments. So these are the soliton structures interacting here on one experiment, and this is a different experiment. And this is 12 millimeters across, and this is in water, a half soliton structure in 1950s, showing the same type of structure. So this is ancient technology. This is the soliton structure and the suppressed pole. So you get an intense magnetic beam of one or other pole, depending on the spin, and then you get this dome, and this is the structure here. And if you know what you're looking at, maybe I can do it here in the monopole clutch. And you can go, I discuss these videos in a lot more detail. This is a libation disc that's in the Metropolitan Museum, and this is from 3100 BC. So you have Ka, which is the spirit, and this is Chi. This is, in my view, the relic neutrino. Okay, all life uses this, by the way, all life. So the biological transmutations that occur in your body, they will be using this relic neutrino flux. The absolute worst thing you can do if you want people not to be healthy is to force them to stay inside, because the relic neutrinos will be absorbed by the humans in the environment, and they will go mad because they connect to the Akashic record through it, and it's partially reflected by glass, and so you will consume them and you will just become unhealthy. If you look at the perovskite symbol here, and this is using 0.4 Tesla magnets under some normal water in a Petri dish and put outside for a week or so. And then he fires a laser at it and it emits these structures. The lower half of this is the exact same ratios as the bottom part of the Ankh. And the bottom part of the Ankh from ancient Egyptian mythology is from the loop down. This symbol represents the key to all hidden knowledge, i.e. all occult knowledge. And this is the half sliced through these exotic vacuum object structures. So the Egyptians knew it. It's difficult to come to terms with this. This is the first time I saw the loops. So this is taking a hole out of this ball that's produced in a dusty plasma reactor, and it's dumped a sphere of carbon in the other one. So I call it the Pac-Man. So these are the magnetic crenellated spheres. And here in this one, you can see the mirrored loops. Now, if it's going to press play, is it going to press play? Maybe. There we go. So you've got a mirror loop there, you've got a mirror loop there, you've got a mirror loop there. And these are the solitons that are in the copper oxide. And then in the next one, we have this, where you actually have the magnetic flux loops, and it's shooting material. And this is actually material that was transmuted. Now, this will be like a wormhole, but when the electromagnetic structure collapses, it produces the material that's in it. It comes back into our three-dimensional space. And Matsumoto talks about the wormhole structure that does the collapsing of matter. And it puts it into, he says the wormhole actually is at 10 to the minus 33, as small as 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, which is 10 to the minus, I don't know, it's basically the Planck's distance. I've got it here somewhere. It's here. It produces a black and white holes. He's got all these pictures of black and white holes and the connection loops. But if I press play here, you can see the magnetic flux loop. So this is the north side, and I've got a magnification above. So you see the north side and the south side. North over here, south there. There's a little one over here. North, south that way, and north, south over here. And over here, you can see that it's synthesized material that's not anywhere in the reactor. And then these were the structures that formed in the copper oxide. This is the copper oxide that has no crystal structure that I was talking about, because it froze at over 1,000 degrees per second. when the exotic vacuum objects in there that disassembled as they were lighting his bulb for 30 minutes. And so, yeah, so and he said it had this sucking sound as it was sucking air in because it was going cold, and it had this crinkling sound. And so, yeah, so one of these structures here is this structure here. And then we see them on the inside of the quartz. And so these are all north poles, and they can group together. And this is a south pole, this is a south pole, these are south poles, this is south pole. And they can shift particle flow. And so here you see the triangle again on that. So these are both south poles and these are both north poles. Okay, so the south pole is ramming material into the center here. This is ramming it even more because it's smaller. Remember, the smaller it gets, the more intense the magnetic flux through the center. And so this is where you get more transmutation. Okay, and this is pulling material away, but this is fused quartz, and these sat on the material and transmuted it. So I've just got a sort of indication of how this sort of fits together. And this is the same structure from a different reactor, but boring its way over. And again, you see how it's overlapped. This is from the inside of the quartz coming through to the outside, and this is looking at it from the outside. And you have these dichotron type instabilities around here where all the vortices are going around and so on. And this is one that I showed earlier here. Anyway, so that's kind of some other aspects to this, but it's the ancient nature of this. And this is in Solin's patent from 1991, and he showed these exact same structures. So this is Shoulders' work, this is the triangle again, this is the triangle again, this was in the magnetic flux loop, this is a bead chain of exotic vacuum objects. And here, this is our work from 2017 onwards. And this is, I found this in August last year. And these are the quantum coherent nuclear transmutating subjects, structures. And these are the magnetic solitons that Solin talks about in his coherent nuclear transmutation reactor.
Cheers, thanks. Yeah,
that's all right. So I think there was someone else that had a question. Brian, is that for me or someone else?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
No, I have a short separate presentation about something else.
I will
completely.
unshare somehow.
But that was a wonderful presentation, a lot of detail there. Hello, everybody. I guess it's my turn now, so I will share screen and briefly tell everyone about what came out of Germany this week. This is a short YouTube I did on it. There are the links are shown to what I'm about to talk about. And that is this. And let me just give you it's not their headline, it's our headline for what we're all interested in. And we're going to look at this website here from Kiel University in Germany. And it put out an article last week, airy material with explosive power. Okay, that's interesting. I follow this graphene sort of stuff. I expect this. However, here's the kicker. Theoretically, it takes less than 450 grams of this material to lift an elephant. Aerographene owes this ability to its unique structure at the nano level. Now that's the bottom line from the university. That's not me saying that, that's them. So to me, that's pretty, and that's worth sharing with the group. So there are a couple articles with, people are probably looking for this, airy material with explosive power. There's the one from the university. There's another one over here from the Graphene Institute, which is very excited about it. It's basically a copy of the university's article. And then there's a third from Nano magazine. It has a different headline, but it's basically the same article. And they link at the end. What they're getting at is this article here. This is your basic information point here from Materials Today. And this is the paper, the article, the paper. It's got videos linked. It's got PDFs showing how they did all this, and you know, as much detail as you can want. And that's Materials this week. Wait a minute. Materials Today, and the article is electrically powered repeatable air explosions using microtubular graphene assemblies. So what they're doing is taking this, well, let me find their article. They take this little piece of graphene here, and they were, I guess they were fooling around with that, and they were getting some results. Then they decided to blow it out like this, and now they're getting great results. And if you'll see the videos, a small, tiny piece of, looks kind of like this smaller piece, and it's stuck in a device. And what they do is, my reading of it is, they're taking a 9-volt battery and pulsing it 10 times a second, and it's pulling the air in from around it and exploding the air out. So this thing works in air so far. I think we can improve upon it. That's what I say in my YouTube video. And I also think we could do a similar experiment at the Hawthorne, New Jersey lab, or at least start taking this stuff a little bit. But this 450 grams for us Americans, and I had to look it up, of course, that's 0.99 of a pound. So you have 1 pound of this stuff lifting an elephant. Your average elephant is anywhere from 6,000 to 13, I forgot, 18. I don't know what it is, but it's very heavy. And in their experiment, they don't do that, of course, but you know they do calculations based on what they did, and they show you in detail in this paper. And it's a free paper, all the no paywall. There's images and videos that show all kinds of stuff, all the detail you could possibly want. And again, it's, well, use joule heating. And they run a little juice through the graphene, which is just a bunch of electrons, basic, you know, hooked together in hexagons. And they start jiggling and joule heating the air by vibrating, and you get an explosion. And this 9-volt thing, I'm thinking, well, what is that? A 9-volt battery like I have on the flashlight? Can this thing hold it and repeat? Can they improve upon it so it's always exploding? You know, it runs through a few cells, and you can look all that up. But what that they show is they take a barbell, 6.6 kilogram, and put it above this this tube. They use this mechanism they used to control the explosion, and that is far more. That weighs more than a 9-volt battery. So I'm saying, you know, this is a rudimentary, in my opinion. In other words, it can be improved upon. It's not, I'm not trying to minimize it. I think it's wonderful. That 450 grams in an elephant, I knew I had to get on here and tell everybody here. And you can all look, you know, you can look at it yourself, draw your own conclusions. You know, I may be wildly prejudiced toward this. This is the kind of thing I'm looking for. I want to see this because I think something like this, again, improved upon, is the key to this quote unquote anti-gravity. And I think that's really all I had to say here today. Let me look at my other windows. Just I would ask you again to take a look at this thing, comment on it, find me on Twitter. The name of the video is Aerographene, a big step toward anti-gravity. 1 pound lifts an elephant, ? And that can be found by looking for me on YouTube, Brian Kelly, BRYANKELLY, 1E, and then put anti-gravity with a dash in it, and I'll come up. So I think that's all I have to say about it, unless someone has a question. I'm no expert on it, but I can maybe answer a question if there are any. Thank you.
So Brian, thanks for sharing that. It's really fantastic. But would it be something that was like you could use it with a one-way valve to just produce gas explosion propulsions in one direction?
Yes, they have that. Actually, this thrusters or micro thrusters or pumps, as they call it, that's only one suggested application. And as you've suggested, valve actuators or another application. And they also said, cleaning things with air, small, tiny objects. And
I mean, you could have 1,000 of them and they're all out of phase, so they produce a smooth propulsion.
Yeah. It's a raw material. It's red meat for people like us to start looking at this thing. And I'm saying my basic idea is you take graphene as a starting point, and I think this can be done in the Hawthorne lab. If you take graphene and soak it in hydrogen, then you're going to have, if you do it perfectly, then you have graphene, which is a material where the graphene, you have 6 carbon atoms in hexagons. Every one of them has its own hydrogen attached. So that's going to absorb light and emit light as it's instructed, ideally, by us. And it will explode in the form of radiation pressure, which should effectively, for our purposes, change the mass of the object, because its photons are mass equivalent. But that's a whole long story, that isn't covered in this. This is just my idea. This is a basic start by these people, in my opinion. So, yeah, and this thing's not going to work where there's no air, because it's just joule heating. It's not absorbing and emitting. It's merely rattling the air. The air itself expands from the heat, allowing more light into the air molecules or the water or whatever in the air. And then that explodes out, and as well as the mass. But I'm saying it doesn't need the mass technically, pardon me. And that's what we want to work toward until you get to any, terahertz waveguides and fancy things like that. Humanity has to start like this with some basic, you could call it an improved balloon. You could just a better way to move light through and around mass, which to me is the key to this stuff. I mean, there are other solutions in all likelihood, but this is kind of an easy one to start with. And I think if you improve upon it, maybe you can approach the speed of light, because you're moving so much light through and around your object that you're just riding on it basically. And if you're in something like air or water, and stuff, radiation pressure at some point is going to be enough to push the air or water away and start spiraling through the air water. but that's way out there. That's way, you know, theoretical tinfoil hat stuff I came up with. So when I see something like this, I'm like, okay, that's a foothold, that's red meat. So that's my rough answer on that. So I don't keep talking and talking and talking. Any
Thanks,
other
Brian.
questions?
No, I'm going to have to duck out because it's 3:30 in the morning here for me.
I understand it's getting late for me too, and I'm here on the East Coast of the United States. So I sympathize. I don't have much more to say, anything more to say right now on this. So I will now bow out and again say thank you
Thank
to
you.
Tim and everyone else involved.
Thanks, Tim.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Is Wayne there? Wayne, are you there? Who's Ben Hyde? I've never seen that name before.
That's me. I'm here.
I'm here.
Oh, Ben, where are you based out of?
Provo, Utah.
Provo, Utah. Okay.
You're in Jersey.
Yes, we're in Hawthorne, New Jersey here.
I spent a couple years back there. Elizabeth Trenton area.
Oh, it's not too far. I mean, Elizabeth isn't too far. Trenton's a bit farther out. It's more like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
What lab are you in?
I'm in the Falcon Space Lab.
Well, that's just cool. I wish I
Yeah,
was.
it's more like a makerspace / lab. Most of these experiments are really, they come down to arts and crafts. And these are the arms that I was in the middle of assembling. I still needs another cut to clean that up and smooth out the top, and then it'll be done. We've got another one in the machine right now. So we should have a set of these done pretty soon.
When you have these experiments up and running, are you going to?
Yeah, I mean, tend to go live on Jeremy Reese's channel, the Alien Scientist. When we have stuff, or we just run them. It's kind of hard to put an experiment on a schedule.
Right. I subscribe to Alien Scientist. I get the notification.
Here's the lab dog, Pinky.
And you have a friend.
She was hanging out in the Faraday cage earlier. Oh, and there goes the compressor.
Right. Well, some of your stuff looks really interesting. That wave guide electromagnet that you have looks fascinating. What are you going to do with it? Uh-oh, and there we go. Well, someone's still there.
Jeremy, what's happening on the YouTube?
Still live. We have 86 people watching right now. And 6.5 hours in.
Or we could show everyone the Brian Kelly. You could stop the screen share. We've got the CNC machine running over here, making more of these arms for the gyroscope. Trying to create linear momentum out of angular momentum. These are the arms that are gonna torque the gyros out at a distance. So with all these hole setups, we'll be able to place the gyro at any distance.
How long does it take your CNC to cut those?
I think this process should be done in about 20 minutes, and it's gonna make just 2 more of these. And then I have to program in the next cut, which is the cleanup cut. And then on top of that, we gotta do all the threading, which gotta set up a rig to do the threading.
That'll take a while. I can't hear that machine at all. Is it really that quiet?
It's drilling really small holes right now, so all you'll hear is the water flowing, and the drill bits are kind of, the drill's not making that much noise. There are other bits that will make really, shake the building. When you're shaking the building, you know that the bit's about to be destroyed too. So
Right.
Well, Max, it looks like you have a lot of
really
cool
want to
toys
avoid.
in the lab.
We have lots of cool stuff in the lab, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's good. I think there's a lot of experiment you can do, a lot of things you can build. That is good.
Yeah, we have more experiments than we have experimenters. So if you want to come down to the lab and get some experiments done.
One of these days I'm going to show
You're
up.
welcome. Harold, where are you based out of?
I am in Downey,
Harold, where are you based out of?
Downey, California.
Oh, California.
Yeah. I do
California,
my
okay.
experiment are mainly the propulsion. That's what I do. I have a lot of video, YouTube, patent pending, things like that, and I keep myself busy doing that. But you have a lot of good, especially the isophone experiment. That's very high tech. That is cool. I imagine they have good help with the physicists you have there with Jeremiah Pop. Where is he today? Oh, question for you. I was going to ask Tim, do you know how much ion wind the beetle wings produce? Have you ever, anybody have measured, the Grevenikov, and you have some beetle wings. Do you know, have you ever measured, do you know if they produce ion wind to produce the lift that they produce, especially the famous Grevenikov beetles?
We haven't really played around with the beetle wings yet. I'm not really sure what to do with them.
Are you going to measure to see, the electrostatic in the beetle wing produce any ion wind?
I mean, we could apply high voltage. It'll probably, create electrostatics at some point.
Yeah,
No
because
doubt about that.
because the wings themselves, from what I read from Greenyer experiment, that without any maybe the beetle produce electrostatic, biological electrostatic, and probably if it is producing ion wind, if it's electrostatic in the wind, there must be some ion wind. And since they are very light, but the beetle wings are very small, probably the thrust to weight ratio for the wings are enough for the beetle to levitate and fly around to produce levitation and thrust to move left, right, back, forth.
I don't think it's an ion wind effect. If it was able to lift him in the space that it showed, it couldn't have been an ion wind effect.
If it is not, because if it is not ion wind,
I don't think it's ion wind now.
because, okay, you know how the Greenyer have in his device, is lifting up. Well, there is no flapping wings of anything. Look like he said he has like thousands of beetle wings on the bottom of his flying device, and he controlled it that way. So I'm wondering, what is the effect? Is there any ion wind? Because if it is, there must be a lot of ion wind being produced, or maybe something else, electrostatic. So far, everything I have read, I have not read any conclusive description of any mechanism that those beetle wings produce lift. So the only thing I am thinking, maybe either there's some magnetic effect or there's ion wind, or both of them. And so I'm looking to see if anybody have ever measured any ion wind to either eliminate or to confirm that in the beetle wing. And if you're going to do the experiment, are you going to measure to prove or disprove that theory of the ion wind on the beetle wings?
I would love to see that too.
Well, Mark, if you do, if you do the beetle wing experiment, I think you should make that experiment to prove or disprove whether there's any ion wind. If there is no ion wind on the beetle wing, then you can provide some proof for all the experimental, all the theoreticians that something else is doing it and what it is. That is the mystery.
Yeah, the mystery or the hoax. I had to get out of there. It was so freaking loud. The compressors turned on, and we put a real end mill in it. Who else do we have here? So Ben, are you running any experiments? Are you in some sort of lab over there? Is that your garage?
This is my basement. And yes, I have.
What are you working on?
Let me show you. Hopefully this will translate to the camera. I've been making fulgurites. This is where I take sand, I put it in a tube, like a toilet paper tube. I put an electrode on the top. I have an electrode at the bottom. I run 9,000 volts. Well, right now I'm running at AC, and I just leave it for like 1 to 5 minutes. The electricity arcs through the sand, fuses the little particles, and that's what comes out. So I've just been trying different sands and soils from all over the US.
Cool.
This is the biggest one I've built so far. I just got back from an Electro Universe geology tour to Fantasy Canyon in Utah. And I am very convinced that that whole area is a large fulgurite. And frankly, the plasma discharge that would have had to have created it would have been gargantuan, just catastrophic. As in, don't be around the area when it was there. Like you would be gone.
Wow.
So if you want to look at it, I've posted pictures in the Electric Universe Geology Facebook page. And of course, Google Images have some pretty good images as well. It's called Fantasy Canyon.
What do you think is the origin of the large discharge that created that park when it happened? What would be the origin of the energy to create that discharge that created that geological monument, that park?
Well, I follow Emmanuel Velikovsky's idea that our solar system wasn't in the same configuration it is now. That back about 12,000 years ago to 50,000 years ago, the planets were in a different configuration. In fact, let me show you this.
Okay.
That configuration called a polar
Oh,
configuration.
okay.
What this would be: Earth, Mars, Venus, and Saturn.
What took it out about the configuration they have now?
That is a good question. It looks like, from what I understand, Saturn was just traveling through the universe with Mars and the Earth as its satellites, and it just got too close to our current sun, and the electric circuitry that was powering Saturn got flipped over to our sun, and that electric imbalance sent everything into chaos, where Mars started going like this, and then Venus started throwing out all sorts of tendrils of plasma, and it was just electrostatic forces that finally forced everybody into their current position right now.
How long ago that happened? Say 50,000 years ago?
That's a great question. Just studying everything that I've read tells me that it probably ended about 12,000 years ago, and prior to that, I'm not sure when it started. Probably anywhere between 20 to 50,000 years ago. That's what it looks like.
Is that in agreement with the theories about millions of years ago, or the dinosaur and things, or in conflict or in agreement?
No, it is not in agreement. I have good reason to doubt the million-year-old idea, just because the evidence for it is really, really lacking. The Emmanuel Velikovsky's ideas, he had some very wrong ideas, to be sure, but he hit upon something that really has a lot of evidence to it, which is fascinating.
Oh, that's something I didn't know. That is interesting, because that looked very controversial. So
It is.
It still is?
Yeah.
Boy.
Here, yes, go. Wow, where to start? I would just go to YouTube, because the Electric Universe group has had conferences, for like 20 years, and they've posted a lot of their top scientists presenting at that, and it's on YouTube. So just go to Electric Universe.
Oh, okay. I'll look at it. But but the fact the electrostatic you describe the fact that is kind of very much in the realm of propulsion, because the electrostatic is creating, is moving the planet around, and therefore that kind of it may hint to a new propulsion mechanism of planetary propulsion around the universe. Would that be something applicable?
I believe so, yes. If I understood you right, the main cause of it is, of course, electricity. And
Right.
we have learned, of course, that electricity flows in the universe in what's called Birkeland currents. And that was discovered locally back at the turn of the century by a Norwegian physicist called Christian Birkeland, who came up with the idea that there was a stream of charged particles connecting the sun and the earth, and that was the cause of the aurora borealis. He was laughed at for decades. In fact, after his death, he was finally validated when we sent up rockets in the 70s and actually measured, oh yeah, there's big long tendrils of energy connecting the earth and the sun, and that's what powers the auroras. And with that in mind, we realized that the entire universe has these gargantuan tendrils, filaments of electricity. Can you see that? Oh crap, that's probably in reverse.
Yes.
Darn it. Let me see if I can flip this. It's Wal Thornhill and David Talbot.
Yeah.
Those are the two main voices of the
David
electric.
Talbot, okay, I know Thorndike. That one I know. The other one is new, David Talbot. Walt
David
Thorndike.
Talbot is the one who, he's called a mytho-historian. He looks at the stories that we're all taught growing up and asks one question: where did they come from? What was the first story? And he has gathered a huge amount of evidence showing that every single nation and culture all over the planet tells exactly the same story. And it's the story of the gods who were identified as Mars, Venus, and Saturn, and what they did. And what they did was change their position and cause horrible destructions to man on Earth.
That would describe a propulsion mechanism right there, you know, the electrostatic and all that, which is worth studying. Well, it looks like you're making progress. I hope you make a big discovery, that one, because that would help propulsion, you know, to humanity to go across the universe, go out, you know, into space, get, you know, asteroid, bring mineral back to Earth, because eventually we're going to run out of resources, whether it is in the next 50 years or 100 years, 1,000 years, but there is something there. That's really cool what you're doing. Keep on doing it. Hey, thank you for the explanation. I will look it up on the Electrical Universe.
Yes, there's some fascinating stuff in there. You're gonna love it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Yeah, I read that book from Michael Talbot several times, actually gave out several copies of it to friends. The Holographic Universe. It's actually a very good book too, like easy to read.
Mike, how's your Alzophone experiment coming along?
I gave an update on it earlier. We're dealing with lots of broken klystrons.
Wow.
And we're hoping to, one of them is like is gassed out, so we're hoping to like degas it later this week. I have somebody coming over to help out with that. The X-band version of it, we might try that again with a shorter wire, because the problem was the amplifier works, it only puts out 20 watts, and most of that energy is getting consumed in the wire with almost nothing ending up inside the chamber. So we're trying to get like a shorter wire, put the amplifier inside the Faraday cage right next to the setup, then we'll be able to see for sure what's happening.
Okay. Oh, that's good. You're making progress. That's excellent. I wish you good luck. I hope you do well on that one. I know you worked for a while, and you should get good results sooner or later.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is it just quiet time, or is this
Yeah, I guess it's resting time.
all right? Hey,
Hi,
I
what's
think
going on
we're
with
at,
you?
we're almost at 7 hours for the live stream. We have 85 people watching. I don't know. You guys want to keep the live stream going, or call it a night?
I'm gonna be here for a while, so do whatever you want to do.
This is the CAD and CAM software.
Yeah, this is CAM right now. We're programming the second step. Basically, this is the material that's going to be in there. And this is how we're going to cut around like that in a circle, and then we're going to smooth out the top, and then it'll be finished.
I forgot to unmute myself in both places. Sorry, man. StreamYard is just causing all kinds of audio problems for me. Doesn't make it easy, but anyways, yeah, what do you guys think? I'm gonna it's about 7 hours here, and we're just open discussion here on so I don't know if there's any reason to keep this open. All right, so thank you guys for everyone watching live on YouTube. This is going to conclude our APEC for November 27th. Thank you guys for watching, and tune in to the next one. And if you guys want to join, here's a link. There we go. Thanks.